Hola muchachos, ¿qué tal? Buenas tardes, aquí tienen el horario para hoy, miércoles el 11 de mayo. Your homework due for today is your oral presentation, Mi Celebración Favorita. For a description on that assignment, you can take a look at the daily agenda video from the previous class. Learning targets for today are for you guys to talk about family celebrations, how you and your family used to celebrate, and that was precisely what you did for your homework for today. We're going to begin Chapter 5 today, and before we do that, we're going to go over some of the key notes from Chapter 4b, the one that we just finished. And those are notes on the imperfect and the preterite used together, and how they're used together to describe a situation. And so your warm-up question is an example of that. Answering the question about how old you were when you first learned how to ride a bike. It's similar to the question you guys are answering for the speaking questions for your final exam study guide. We went over the study guide in last class, or we'll go over it today if we didn't have time. And for the speaking section, this is on the back of the study guide. For the speaking section, you have 10 questions to choose from. Of those 10, you will do 5. Of the 5, you will pick 3. And the question we're going to answer today is similar to one of the questions on the final. Number 7, ¿Cuántos años tenías cuando aprendiste a caminar? How old were you when you first learned to walk? So tenías is the verb tener, to have. In Spanish, we use the verb to have when we talk about age. And anytime we talk about age in the past, we use the imperfect. So you're going to use tener in the imperfect in the yo form to begin your response and then indicate your age, followed by the verb aprender, which is the verb to learn. You can see that's in the preterite. So you're going to respond in the preterite, but in the yo form. You can see the example here you can use. For example, ¿Cuántos años tenías cuando aprendiste a montar en bicicleta? You're going to begin by saying yo tenía and then your age. Yo tenía 2 años cuando aprendí a montar en bicicleta. I was 1 or 2 or 3 or however old when I learned how to ride a bike. And again, that's number 7, similar to number 7 on your study guide. So we're going to go over the notes on page 219 first, going over how the imperfect and the preterite are used together to describe a situation. And these are notes that we went over last week, just reviewing briefly before we start Chapter 5. Everything highlighted in yellow pertaining to the imperfect. Everything highlighted in green pertaining to the preterite. Imperfect is used for continuous, repeated actions in the past, right? When we describe people, places, and situations in the past, we use the imperfect for that. For your project that you turned in earlier this week about your childhood, your autobiographical presentation, you were describing yourself, family members, places you used to go to, and you used the imperfect exclusively for that project because those were the types of descriptions that you were making. We also use the imperfect to talk about a past action that doesn't have a beginning or a specified beginning or end point, like your childhood. You didn't say specifically, like, 5 years ago or what have you. You didn't specify the time. So anytime it's ambiguous, no specific beginning or end, we use the imperfect. And then this is what we're going to focus on for Chapter 5a, how the imperfect is used to describe a situation, to provide background information. And then things that took place within that setting, completed actions that took place within that setting, are expressed in the preterite. The imperfect is used to tell what was happening, to provide that background information, and then the preterite is used to talk about those completed actions that happened or took place within that setting. So we'll watch a grammar video together that'll kind of curate some they'll give us some examples of the uses of the preterite and the imperfect. And at the very end of the video, there's a guided quiz that'll provide some examples of the imperfect, like this one here. La anciana era muy simpática, describing someone, right? Mis abuelos estaban muy felices. Again, a description of what people were like in the past. And then we're going to look at some examples of how the imperfect and the preterite can be used together. For example, mis parientes comían, imperfect, cuando nosotros llegamos. Comían, because this is the action that's giving us the background information. My relatives were eating. When we arrived, the verb llegar is to arrive, and that's the completed action that takes place within the setting. Imperfect to provide the setting. Preterite to talk about the completed action that takes place within it. Another example. Yo miraba la tele cuando María llamó. I was watching TV, background setting, when Maria called, completed action. So one of the imperfect is used for the background information, setting the situation, and the preterite is used for completed actions within that setting. So after the video, we're going to start chapter 5, which is on page 238. We'll look at the learning objectives for chapter 5. Chapter 5 is all about the news. To be able to listen and read about disasters and rescues, to talk and write about how things were during your day and about disaster movies, and then to exchange information about newsworthy events. So the who, what, when, where, why, and how, right? To be able to identify that information and exchange that information about current events. On page 243, you have the last activity that we're going to do, which is a news story. In el noticiero, we're going to answer the comprendiste questions on exercise 3 on page 243. And again, no homework, do it all next class. Aquí está. So let's take a look at the questions so that you know what to look for in this video. Número 1. ¿Qué ven Tomás y Raúl en la televisión? What do Tomás and Raúl see on TV? ¿Y qué pasó? What happened? Número 2. ¿A dónde quiere ir Raúl? ¿Y quiere ir Tomás también? Where does Raúl want to go, and does Tomás want to go as well? Número 3. ¿A quiénes ven Tomás y Raúl cuando llegan a la casa? Who do Tomás and Raúl see when they arrive to the home? And then what are those people doing? Número 4. ¿A qué hora comenzó el incendio y qué lo causó? What time did the fire begin or commence, and what caused it? And then we're going to skip number 6. You only need to do 1 through 5. Number 5, ¿había gente en la casa? Were there any people at the house? ¿Y cómo estaba? How were they? So as you can see for like numbers 1 and 2, the answers are text dependent, meaning you can find the answer in the text. Número 1, Raúl y Tomás ven un incendio en una casa. Y Raúl quiere ir a la casa. Raúl quiere ir a la casa, ¿cierto? Tomás no quiere ir a la casa. He doesn't want to go see this event. So those are your questions. You can follow along in the script. You can see how the answers are text dependent. You can find them in the text. And that's where we will conclude today's class. Y'all, no homework due next class. Nos vemos en clase.